Henry Ford once said, "A weakness of all human beings is trying to do too many things at once. That scatters effort and destroys direction. It makes for haste, and haste makes for waste." When Henry Ford was asked what he does to combat this weakness, his answer was this: "I go out and trot around the house. While I'm running off the excess energy that wants to do too much, my mind clears, and I see what can be done and should be done first." In other words, Ford found clarity and focus. Now, Henry Ford said these words, but unfortunately, his observation about the weakness of all human beings holds true even within the church. A weakness of the church is trying to do too many things at once, which scatters effort and destroys direction. And for the church to be successful and to increase, that same kind of clarity and focus is needed as it centers around and drives us towards our common purpose and desired goal of increasing and teaching the people of Christ's church. As we wrap up our October month focusing on commitment, I want to spend some time today, and unfortunately it's going to be quite a bit of time, providing some clarity and focus. In a sense, I have trotted around the house, or the church, so to speak. And so I want to take a look into our future. What does St. Matthias look like? And let's see what I see in 10 years, in 2027. Here's my answer. We are at least a 300-member congregation. We have at least a $450,000 budget, and we are beyond 41, 42-day flower, meaning we are not in this location and this building where we sit today. Now, I probably just broke the taboo rule of pastoring, at least as it's perceived to be in more traditional type churches. I focused on numbers. I focused on money, and I focused on the building. But here's the thing. Every pastor does it. We usually just don't say it. Okay? Every person in the church does it, whether we admit it or not. And actually, if we go to the scriptures, it is the very commandment of God that we should be concerned about growth and increase. In the opening pages of Scripture, God commanded Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply, to subdue the earth. Jesus then told his disciples the same thing. Go out and make disciples of all nations, starting in Jerusalem, then Judea, then Samaria, and into the uttermost parts of the earth. In other words, be fruitful and multiply. Jesus even tells a parable of the talents. And in that parable, the master gives each servant some talents, and the first two increase, while the third buries it away and maintains what he just had. And in the end, it was that servant who did not seek to increase what his master gave him that is scolded, and the little that he had was taken away from him. That parable is not about money. Jesus tells that parable, or tells us that that parable is about the kingdom of God and our proper stewardship and care for his kingdom. We seek to increase what God has given us into our care. We do not seek simply to maintain and protect it. So I think it's time that the church, not just here, but across the globe, especially in our own circles, start caring about numbers. And let me explain why by looking at it backwards. I recently heard a story about Tony Dungy. And Tony Dungy is a Hall of Fame football player and coach from the NFL. And it's said that when Tony first became a coach of a down-and-out team, I believe it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he said the ultimate goal was to win a Super Bowl. I mean, that's the goal of every team. But he said it is not enough to focus on winning the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl championship is actually the result of focusing on what it takes to win a Super Bowl. So Dungy studied what every other championship team had done. What did they do week in and week out? What did they have in common? And what he found was that every championship team had very few penalties. Every championship team had a strong special teams. Every championship team had certain values and defining marks. And that when they did and celebrated those things, a championship would be inevitable. So he built the team around living out those things. In other words, you can learn a lot about what you have done by what you have achieved. If you win a Super Bowl, it isn't because of chance. It's because you did what it took to win a Super Bowl. So here's the truth. The attendance at church, the amount of giving, and subsequently the facilities needed to address the size of the church really represent what we have done in our ministry and in our personal lives. These are a direct measurement of our witness, of our priorities, and of our discipleship. I mean, think of it this way. We do not come to worship unless we understand the importance of worship. We do not give or increase our giving unless our faith is deepened and we have a strong trust that the Lord will provide even as we give back to Him. We do not commit our time to the church unless we understand the great priority and purpose of that to which we are committing. We do not invite others to church unless we are open to sharing our faith with others. Visitors do not return unless they were touched by someone or something at the church. Non-believers do not come to the faith unless they are loved as sinners and have the grace and forgiveness of Christ explained and shown to them. New believers do not grow in their faith unless they are fed and nurtured along the way by those in the church. So what does growth mean? And what do the numbers of the church mean? It means we and others are being touched in some way by our common life. It means that we as individuals and as a parish are tending to the right things. It means that we are focused on the correct things, which inevitably increases His kingdom. And I note that the opposite also is true. If we do not grow, there is a reason. And let's say this, the reason is not them. The reason is not because they don't get our way of doing things. The reason is not because they don't know we are here. The reason is not because they fill in the blank. The real reason is because we. It's because we have not done the things we ought to do to promote that growth. We either don't value what we say we value, or we don't know how to achieve what we say we value, or we allow things to exist that serve as obstacles to what we value. But in whatever the case, it lies with we, not they. I made this point last week. It's about a culture of growth. A culture where we ourselves and every other single person across the spectrum of spiritual maturity can be enriched and empowered with the grace and strength of God. So let's throw it out on the table, so to speak. I see St. Matthias in 10 years with at least 300 in attendance, with at least a $450,000 budget, and we are not in the church building where we are sitting today. We are beyond 41, 42. And it is all the result of having a culture of growth with an opportunity for every single person to grow in their faith. My desire is that every single person here is so excited about our faith and our life in Christ, recognizing who we are and what Jesus has done for us, that the joy of knowing how important we are to Him would always see us through any and all circumstances, and that we wouldn't be choked out by the thorns and the thistles and the weeds of life, My desire is that every single person here would want to carry our Christ-likeness into other areas of our lives besides Sunday morning worship. That what we learn from our Savior in a gospel lesson, or what I might be able to communicate in a sermon on Sunday morning, or what we might learn in Sunday school or in a home fellowship Bible study, that it might strike a nerve in you and me, so that when we're sitting at work on Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, you can say, here's that opportunity for me to be Christ-like in this moment. My desire is that every one of us, including myself, would be able to break out of our spiritual shells, out of our upper rooms, so to speak, and not be afraid to tell another person about Jesus' love and his forgiveness. And I'm not talking about the kind of intellectual bantering with another about the ins and outs of theology. I'm talking about the down-to-earth, real-life relationship aspects that show another who is feeling hopeless that there is hope. That we can comfort another with God's grace when they are hurting. That we can show them mercy and forgiveness when they have screwed up. That we can not just teach, but show them that there are more important things in life than rusting treasures and momentary pleasures. So ultimately, we must value the following things. We must value the following things. And I'm only going to list a few of them and say a few words about each. And know this, we must not value them just in word. Token values are worth nothing. Values must be embraced. Values must be lived. Values must create our culture. And when they do, all other things fall into place. I'll be right back first. We value expressing our relationship with God in thankful, meaningful, and joyful worship. Worship and our Sunday time together ought to be the highlight of our week. Something that we don't want to miss. And I understand sometimes it feels like a chore. I mean, sometimes it's like, OMG, I don't feel like getting up and going to church today. I get it, because I have those Sunday mornings too. It's been a long week. All you want to do is be lazy. All you want to do is sleep in or veg around the house. But why is that? Worship should be something we don't want to miss. I mean, for me, it's like playing golf. You can fill in your own hobby that you love instead of golf because the principle remains the same. If someone offers to play golf, which Jason Ray did with me this week, then I look forward to it. I try to rearrange my schedule to be able to do it. And it doesn't always work out that way, but I wish it could. And I do it because it's enjoyable to me. It's a time to be with a friend. It's a time for me to get away from work, from other things. So why isn't worship the same way? If it's not, and we don't desire it, then something is not right. Either we aren't getting something out of worship, or we aren't getting something out of our relationships here, or we don't understand what's happening, or there is something in our worship that isn't working the way it should. We should be joyful. We should be refreshed. We should be singing our music out. We should be getting something out of my sermons. We should feel strengthened from our conversations with one another. If we are not, or we come because that's what we're supposed to do, then we need to evaluate or change something. Because otherwise we miss the purpose and the benefit of worship. We value our personal growth in our faith. It's not enough to say, I believe in Jesus. We must seek to grow more into Him. This means learning. This means reading His holy word. This means growing in our participation in the life of the church. This means investing our time or our money or our gifts into that relationship. This means seeking to live in accordance with His will and purpose for our lives, even when our sinful self is screaming at us to go the other way. Every day we awaken In some way, God must become more and more and more present in our life, in our thoughts, and in our actions. We must personally grow in our faith. We value relationships, sharing, honesty, and openness within the church. If our relationships in the church can only go skin deep, then I will say that our parish will only ever be skin deep. It will be surface level. And you can only exist on that level for so long. The test of a relationship and the bond of Christ between Christians, brothers, and sisters is not simply in the pleasantries that are shared on Sunday morning. It is in the sharing and the caring of those moments of pain and trial and joy. It's in those times when you can express yourself openly to and with another as you pray together. It's in those moments that I spoke of last week when tough words of honesty can be spoken in love. It's in the moments of being able to say, I forgive you. The church must be filled with relationships, not acquaintances. We must value personal ownership in and of the church, both investing ourselves into it, but in taking initiative to care for it and for each other. This church belongs to Jesus. We'll just get that out of the way. This church belongs to Jesus. But yet, this church belongs to us. And each of us has a responsibility to care for it. We are stewards, literally meaning in the Greek, a manager of the house. And how do we take personal ownership? Equate it as though it is your own home. Because it is. If you see something that needs to be done, you do it. If you see something that's out of kilter, you say something. If you know there is a need, you help meet it. The church is not just the place we come to on Sunday morning. The church members are our family. And both our building and our gatherings are our home. No. Next, we value differences. We are not clones of each other, nor should we want to be. We are all centered around the same purpose and person of Jesus Christ, but we are all different. We have different gifts, we have different backgrounds, we have different positions in life, we have different ages, we have different beliefs about certain things, we have different races, we have different political leanings, we all have different approaches to life, we all have different cultures, we all have different levels of understanding, we all have different levels of faith, but yet we are unified in our diversity. Differences should not stand to divide us. They should stand to strengthen us. Just as God created all of creation, each in its own kind, with differences. Just as God created Adam and Eve, each with their differences. So Christ Church, as the new creation, is the same way. If we do not embrace those that are different than ourselves, we will never increase his kingdom. And the last one of our values this morning is we value outsiders. And this is a tough one, but it's a vital one. And I worded it this way on purpose. Normally we would say, we value outreach. The church is always saying, outreach, outreach, outreach. And it's fine to say that. But I think saying outreach often ends up placing a focus on a program of outreach. And we tend to value a program instead of the purpose of the program. So by saying that we value outsiders places more of an emphasis on people themselves. We value those people who are not a part of us, and we desire to have them become a part of us. You see, that takes it away from the program. It takes it away from the excuse that people have when they say, well, we don't do any outreach. It's not that we value an outreach program or system. What we value is people. And unless that value is evident, no outreach program or system will ever increase the witness of a church. We must value those who are not traditional like us. We must value those who visit us and aren't familiar with anyone here. We must value those in our community whom we've never even met. But most importantly, we must value those who aren't even churchgoers. Yes, we must value them. We must want them to come to know Christ. We're not here to condemn them. We're not here to speak down about them. We're not here to say we will love them when they finally come to Jesus on their own or through someone else. We must value them as they are, so that they will be driven by our love for them, that we can lead them to Christ. Even while we were yet sinners, God still loved us and sent his Son to die for us. So we need to value them as God valued us. And know this, there is more joy in heaven over one sinner that repenteth than over the 99 righteous ones. Now, hopefully I haven't lost everybody. Because we have a few more minutes to go. And what I want to share with you is what the next 10 years will look like. And I'm not going to tell you specific details of everything. That's not the intent of this. We'll determine the how or which method or model details as we come to plan for each stage. But what I will tell you is the specific focus for each time frame. And while I'll have it up on the big screen in just a second, I have also printed it off along with our values. And I'm going to ask someone, Jake, to help hand this out. And it's a good thing I printed it out because that's kind of hard to read on here. But what you'll notice is that I have broken this apart into 4 main sections with specific time frames. The first is where we currently are with the time marker 0. The next is 2 years from now at the end of 2018. Then there's 5 years at the end of 2021. And finally, 10 years for the end of 2026. And the first part is where we currently are. Currently, we have about 55 people of average Sunday attendance. Lately, it's been a little bit less than that, but usually it's around 55. And our budget is roughly $90,000. And what you can see is that over the past couple of years, our focus has been on worship and trying to have additional people participate in the leading of worship. We have increased our Sunday school classes and focused on trying to have better communication parish-wide, and then also on continuing our Laus Deo baskets. So in reality, our focus has been on people that are already at the church, with a little bone thrown to the outside world through our Laus Deo baskets. In other words, we maintain. But we must not maintain and remain. In 2 years, we will double our average attendance and be about 100 people. And our giving will increase to $150,000. During this time, from now until 2 years from now, our focus will be on those who come to the church. And I'll come back to it specifically in just a second, because this is where the meat of what we're going to be doing is really at. And we must understand that part when we walk out of here today. In 5 years, we'll be at 150 people and a $225,000 budget. And our focus during that period of 2 to 5 years will begin to move towards reaching out. We will go beyond the focus of our 10:30 service. That's what beyond 10:30 a.m. means. We're participating in the community, perhaps having alternative opportunities for worship, perhaps a Spanish service, and we are focused on developing other group ministries like the youth, the women, etc., that can be well supported. We've tried it, but it hasn't been very well supported so far. The specifics for that aren't determined now, but the specific focus of reaching out will drive what we choose to do during that particular period of time. And finally, in 10 years, as I've said earlier, we are beyond 41, 42-day cloud. In 10 years, we are not here. At that point, between 5 years and 10, we are outgrowing what this facility can handle. We have 300 people, $450,000 budget, and we are impacted. We're not just participating in the community, but we are creating opportunities for the community. and impact in the community. We are focused on how we can impact and help our diocese and our denomination at large. You see, the church is no longer just reaching out to people. At this point, the people have become the church everywhere we go. Now, let's go back to that 2-year mark, because this is the focus for the next 2 years. And our focus during the next 2 years has 3 main things. First, we have to equip ourselves to deal with visitors. Here's the truth. As we are right now, we are ill-equipped in this regard. For example, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and you can put your hands up if you know the answer. What is the process for a visitor to become a member of St. Matthias? No hands. 1 hand. What are the things we do at St. Matthias that we can tell visitors about? How can a visitor participate and fit into the life of St. Matthias? How do we follow up with visitors? And I would bet that most of the time, the answer is something like this. Talk to Father Jason. And guess what? When they come to Father Jason, here's what Father Jason says. What do I tell them? All this is to say, we are ill-equipped, and we must address that immediately. We must be able to empower visitors by letting them know what we stand for, what we would like to do, knowing how they can participate in the life of our parish and what steps that they can take next. But we also have to make sure that we're equipped to help every and any individual that comes to us, no matter where they fall on that spiritual maturity spectrum. What do we have that helps someone understand what grace is? What do we have that helps someone understand what Jesus did for us, that explains that gospel message? What do we have that explains the things that we really take for granted because we have been taught them all of our life? Not everyone knows what we know, and we need to be able to help them. So we need to address the question of how do we communicate with those who are not like us? Because if we can't do that, we will never effectively minister and witness to the world, despite what great humanitarian things or community programs we choose to put into place. Going back to the values that I communicated earlier, we must have an atmosphere that says we truly value outsiders and their choice to join us. So we need to design and produce things, take-home gifts, follow-up plan, etc. And we also need to evaluate everything through the eyes of a visitor. What do they see that we no longer see because of our familiarity with the place? When we pull up to the church on Sunday morning, what do they notice that we are now blind to? Because trust me, they'll learn a lot before the first note of the organ is played for worship, while we're all still over there, gathered next door. What does our property say to them? What do our actions before, during, and after worship say? What does our conversation say? And I have to say this with the utmost importance. If we do not address this issue and address it immediately, there's no sense in moving forward with anything. We might as well stay where we are and maintain what we have for ourselves and then wait until the parish dies, because it will. We must value outsiders and provide a way for them to become a part of us. Second, we have to address what I'm calling our, quote, virtual presence. We are currently, I'll give you an example, currently signed up for Google AdWords, and we get a certain amount of prominent ads in the search results for free. And we started this in May. To date, we've received just under $10,000 worth of free advertising from Google. But beyond that number is that we've had over 6,500 clicks to our website. 6,500 people have clicked to our website since May the 8th. Basically 1,100 clicks per month on average. And here's the problem. Our website is out of date and not fully done. It's not that it's a mess, but it's out of date. And furthermore, it is not mobile friendly, which is a must today. The statistics keep rising, stating that more and more people use their mobile devices for web browsing than they do their desktops or their laptops. Our website is the single greatest advertising tool that we have. It is the front door, the picture of the front yard with the white picket fence and trimmed bushes that give people a glimpse of what could possibly be inside. And what they find in that online picture forms the hopes and the expectations of what they will find when they visit. Our online presence, our virtual presence, is the first impression. It is that which builds hope. It is that which fuels excitement. And people's expectations will be created by what they see on our website and on our social media sites. So what kind of expectation are we providing through that vehicle? What kind of hope are we giving to someone who is searching for a great church family and a church home? If it's maintained, the church is on the up and up, paying attention. If it's not maintained, well, this church isn't doing too well. They can't even update their website. If it's not mobile friendly, which again ours is currently not, then they are not interested in keeping up, or they don't have the means to address this. Now the question will come, how come our website isn't up to date? And here's the answer and the problem, which is really the answer and problem to a lot of different things, is because I am the one that does it. And I just haven't gotten to it. So we need to address our website issue and solve the problem of keeping it up to date and relevant moving forward. But we also need to utilize technology in other ways. We have to find opportunities via YouTube videos or social media, things like that, that will help effectively promote the church and provide meaningful information to people so that what they find online or in their feed might make them choose to find out more. In today's virtual world, we must have a good virtual presence. And third, I'd like to see us develop home fellowship. If we are going to reach beyond 41-42 day flat, we have to begin taking steps to get us out of 41-42 day flat and beyond our 10:30 a.m. worship or our 9:30 a.m. Sunday school. And by establishing home fellowship, it will create two main things. It will give us an opportunity to be more flexible, intimate, and focused with each other than we have on Sundays. We fellowship on Sunday. But it's really hard to fellowship and to grow relationships from just Sunday morning hospitality hour. And let's face it, most of us all drive from at least 8 miles or more, which in Houston traffic means 45 minutes on a weekday. And the idea that we can all come to church on Wednesday nights for a Bible study or for a plethora of other events, well, that's just dreaming. We are not the small town country church that's just a mile down the road anymore. So we need to have something that breaks us out of that typical model of do everything at the church. So we can use these home fellowship opportunities as a time to eat together, a time to pray together, a time to study together, or just to have coffee and chat, and to have them more accessible to us. The goal and purpose of this is ultimately relationship building, but they can serve other purposes as well. And they'll also give us an opportunity to invite friends. It's much easier to invite people to something informal and relaxed rather than trying to get someone to join us for worship at church. So it will help equip us with something to help start sharing our church with others outside of our church. Now, I've said in the past weeks that I would spend some time on finances, but unfortunately I don't think that we can do that today. You note that on the commitment card I indicated that we need $100,000 to maintain our current budget as it is. And in addition, we'll be devoting $6,000 in 2017 towards these main areas of visitor program, virtual presence, and home fellowship. And what I'd like to do is this. As our vestry works through our budget and begins to consider the financial parts of your commitment cards, I'll have them provide you with the story of our budget and an update on that in December. So as we close this morning, I want to return and say one last thing about that 10-year slide. On this slide, you'll notice that I circled 4 stages, for lack of a better term. Maintaining, expanding, reaching, exploding. And what you'll notice is that each of those, quote, stages are really stages where our focus changes, leading us from focusing on maintaining what we currently have to impacting others. Our goal changes from the people at the church, which is where we're at, to the people who come to the church reaching people, until finally the people become the church, which in its essence is really the church without bounds. The church literally explodes because when every single member of the church is empowered in the right way, the witness and impact on the community is exponentially increased. What starts as 50 can easily become 100, can easily become 300, can easily become 1,000. Now we tend to doubt that, but it's true. When you look at the large megachurches, most of them have been in the past 20 years. Let me ask you, how did they start as 10 people and become 5,000, 10,000, 25,000 that fast and have their budgets explode like crazy? We can say, well, they didn't teach Jesus. They don't require much in terms of spiritual discipline. They don't blah, blah, blah. And that's true. There are many teachings and approaches to Scripture and theology that we don't agree with them. But the truth is, that is not that which grew their churches. What they all have in common is this: a well-defined purpose and a plan around which people can rally and leaders who can keep them focused. They know what they should do, when they should do it, and they dared to actually do it. They have a culture for growth. And that's where we are. And so many of our that's where we and so many of our smallish parishes often lack. We're often stuck in the maintaining phase, focused only on trying to keep the small flock that we already have and stopping it from falling apart. Admittedly, pastors, including myself, are not always the best leaders. All this vision and purpose and values and goals and objectives and tasks, it's not something I learned in seminary. And I'll tell you now, I wish I had. It is perhaps more important than half the other classes that I had. Because let's face it, the overall well-being of the church does not hinge on my fluidity in Greek and Hebrew. I have resources to help me with that. I have resources to help me remember my church history. You see, pastors must not only be dispensers of the truth, pastors must also be leaders. And leadership means we must know and have the tools to break us out of simply maintaining and take us to where we should go so that we can realize where we can go. In other words, leadership revolves around empowering people and empowering other people to lead. Beloved, that's what it takes. And that's the journey that we're committing to today. By the love of God, we will break out of maintaining today. We will break out of maintaining today. And I'm going to say it one more time. We will break out of maintaining today. In 10 years from today, I will stand before you, Lord willing, in a different place, with an increased congregation of at least 6-fold. And I will say, we did not maintain. We expanded, we reached, and then we exploded.